Jiraiya reached Konoha while the village was still burning. He had been near the western border. An emergency toad found him, and he had crossed the land of fire without stopping. Roof tiles cracked beneath his sandals as he moved through what remained of the western district. Shinobi carried the wounded through streets covered in ash. Civilians dug at collapsed houses with bleeding hands. Above them, the stone faces of the Hokage watched through a veil of smoke. The newest face had already become a memorial to both Minato and Kushina. Their son was only a few hours old, and 5 adults were already arguing over who would control him. Jiraiya entered the sealed chamber beneath the hospital and found the child lying inside a ring of fresh ink. The newborn's face was red from crying. A black spiral marked his stomach. Around the table stood Hiruzen, Danzo, 2 village elders, and a seal master whose hands would not stop shaking. Danzo spoke of security. The elders spoke of military balance. The seal master spoke of instability. None of them used the child's name. Jiraiya looked at the blonde hair, the 6 faint marks on the baby's cheeks, and the tiny hand opening and closing against the cold air. Then Danzo called him the vessel. That was when Jiraiya stopped listening politely. The argument lasted until dawn. Danzo wanted the child transferred to Root before rumors could spread. His reasoning was calm and difficult to dismiss. Someone wearing a mask had learned the exact time and place of Kushina's labor. That person had bypassed the village barrier, murdered the guards, separated the 9 tails from its host, and controlled the beast with a Sharingan. A normal childhood, Danzo insisted, was no longer possible. The boy needed handlers, seals, and training before foreign villages discovered what had happened. Jiraiya answered that raising Minato's son in an underground cell would create the very monster they claimed to fear. The elders reminded him that the 9 tails had nearly erased Konoha in a single night. Jiraiya reminded them that the newborn on the table had not destroyed anything. He had been used to stop it. Hiruzen listened longer than anyone expected. He looked 20 years older than he had the last time Jiraiya saw him. Smoke clung to his robes. There was blood on one sleeve, and it did not appear to be his. The 3rd Hokage finally admitted what none of them wanted written in an official record. Konoha might already have an enemy inside its walls. Keeping the new Jinchuriki in a fixed location could make him easier to find, not safer. That opened the path to a compromise. Jiraiya would become the child's official guardian under a secret S-rank assignment. He would move the boy between protected locations, monitor the 8 trigram seal, and send regular reports directly to Hiruzen. The child's identity would remain known to only a handful of people. He would stay a citizen of Konoha, and no foreign village, minor lord, or independent faction could be allowed to claim him. There was one final condition. On the boy's 12th birthday, Jiraiya had to bring him back to Konoha for formal training and service. A separate emergency clause allowed the village council to demand temporary custody if the guardian was declared compromised, although the Hokage still held final authority. Jiraiya read both lines twice. He knew what Danzo would do if he refused. Root would take the child before sunset, and every argument after that would happen behind walls Jiraiya could not enter without starting a civil war. So he signed. Danzo washed the ink dry and asked whether a wandering spy with no home was truly qualified to raise an infant. Jiraiya picked up the child from the center of the sealing ring. The crying stopped after a moment. A tiny fist closed around the collar of his coat. Jiraiya looked at Danzo and spoke the only direct warning he gave that night. "Try to take him from me, and I will tear Root out of Konoha stone by stone." No one doubted that he would try. The child left the village before sunrise, under 3 layers of concealment seals. Hiruzen announced only that Minato had defeated the 9 tails at the cost of his life. The fate of the beast became a state secret. The name Naruto Uzumaki disappeared from public records before most villagers ever knew it existed. For the first month, a hungry infant at 2 in the morning proved more dangerous to Jiraiya than any creature he had faced in battle. He had infiltrated fortified compounds, survived wars, and gathered intelligence in countries where his face appeared on execution notices. A child who could scream for an hour because a blanket felt wrong defeated every method he knew. He tried using shadow clones to change diapers. The plan seemed brilliant, until the clones vanished and returned every smell, every mistake, and every humiliating second to the original at once. He spent the next morning sitting outside the safe house with a blank expression, while 3 small toads refused to come within 10 steps of him. A retired field medic named Mika lived near the first safe house. She had once survived an ambush because Jiraiya dragged her out of a burning wagon, and she repaid the debt by teaching him that infants needed to be fed more than once a day. She also removed 6 explosive tags from the room where he had placed Naruto's crib. Jiraiya explained that the tags faced outward. Mika explained that babies eventually learn to crawl. Jiraiya moved the tags. Naruto's first clear word came from Gamakichi during an unsuccessful afternoon of babysitting, and belonged in no respectable nursery. Jiraiya spent 3 days denying responsibility. Mika wrote the word on a wooden board and hung it above his bed. When Jiraiya moved Naruto away from the first safe house, Mika was never given another route or address. She received an occasional short letter through a toad, enough to know the boy was alive, and not enough to lead anyone to him. The humor made the work bearable, but the work changed him. He rejected a 3-month intelligence mission because it would take him beyond the range of his toad network. He stopped sleeping in gambling houses and began saving enough money to maintain several hidden homes. He learned which fevers were dangerous, how to hold a bottle while reading a coded report, and how to inspect the seal on Naruto's stomach without waking him. His first report to Hiruzen described the child as the protected object. Jiraiya stared at the words for a long time. Then he crossed them out and wrote Naruto. By the time Naruto could walk, Jiraiya had built a small world around him. There was a stone house beside an abandoned shrine in northern Fire Country. There was a room above a tea shop owned by one of Jiraiya's informants. There was a hunting cabin near the border, a hidden chamber beneath a bathhouse, and a cottage that could be collapsed into a storage scroll in less than 10 minutes. Naruto believed every move was part of an adventure. In one town, he was Naru, the son of a traveling herbalist. In another, he was the nephew of a deeply unsuccessful author. Once, when Jiraiya introduced him as the quiet child of a merchant family, Naruto bowed to a fruit seller. He announced that he was Lord Naruto III, ruler of the Western Forests and commander of 17 invisible soldiers. The fruit seller reached for the town guard. Jiraiya carried Naruto away under one arm, while the boy demanded to know why a proper ruler could not negotiate the price of oranges. Jiraiya hid small paper seals around the house and rewarded Naruto for finding them. He taught him to notice when a toad followed from the rooftops. Naruto learned to leave false footprints, escape simple knots, and cross a room without touching the floorboards marked with chalk. At 5, he could identify 3 common poisons by smell, but he could not remember the name of the Fire Country's finance minister. Jiraiya considered that a useful exchange. The rules of their life felt ordinary to Naruto. They never used the same road twice. They never slept beside an uncovered window. Jiraiya always entered a new room first and left last. Naruto was not allowed to say Uzumaki where strangers might hear it. When he asked why, Jiraiya said his parents had enemies. That answer was true, but it was not complete. The first time the red chakra appeared, Naruto was 6. Jiraiya had arranged to meet an informant in a small border town where merchants from the Land of Rivers sold tools and medicine. The informant was a thin man with burned fingers who had spent 2 years watching the movement of missing ninja. He arrived late, sat across from Jiraiya in a crowded noodle shop, and slipped a coated strip of paper beneath the bowl. The attackers did not know Naruto was important. They had come for the informant. A server placed tea on the table. Jiraiya smelled bitter almonds beneath the steam and knocked the cup away before anyone drank. The informant stood too quickly. A needle passed through the space where his throat had been and struck the wall. The noodle shop erupted. 2 men overturned a table and drew short blades. A woman near the door threw a smoke pellet toward the ceiling. Customers rushed for the street, colliding in the narrow entrance. Jiraiya moved once. His hair lengthened, caught the first attacker by the wrists, and slammed him into a support beam. The second tried to circle behind him. Jiraiya drove an elbow into the man's ribs without even turning his head. The real danger came from above. A third attacker had hidden among the roof beams. He released a spread of poison senbon toward the fleeing informant. Jiraiya pushed Naruto and two civilians beneath an overturned table, then stepped into the path of the needles. Most struck his hardened hair. One slipped through and entered the muscle below his shoulder. The poison burned at once. Jiraiya tore the needle free, but his arm weakened. The roof attacker dropped down with a blade aimed at the informant's spine. Naruto saw the blood spreading through Jiraiya's sleeve. The world around him narrowed. The noise of the shop faded beneath a deep pulse that seemed to come from inside his bones. Heat rushed through his stomach. Red chakra leaked from his skin and crawled over his arms like boiling smoke. The table above him lifted. Naruto did not remember standing. One moment he was beside the civilians, and the next he had crossed half the shop. His fingers closed around the attacker's ankle. The man looked down in surprise just before Naruto threw him through a wall. Wood exploded into the street. Naruto turned toward the next movement he sensed. It was the informant trying to reach safety, but the red chakra did not care. Every heartbeat sounded hostile. Every smell carried fear. Jiraiya appeared in front of him. Naruto swung. Jiraiya caught the small fist with his good hand and pressed two fingers against the seal on the boy's stomach. Black markings spread across the red chakra. The pressure vanished so quickly that Naruto's legs folded. He woke several hours later in a rented room with a cool cloth across his forehead. Jiraiya sat beside the window, mixing antidote with one hand. The wounded shoulder had been bandaged. He looked tired, and that frightened Naruto more than the fight. Jiraiya did not pretend nothing had happened. He explained that a living creature called the Nine Tails had been sealed inside Naruto on the night his parents died. It possessed enormous chakra and a hatred of humans that had grown over many years. Fear and anger could open small paths through the seal if Naruto lost control. Naruto listened, with both hands gripping the blanket. The first question he managed was whether the fox had been the one who hurt Jiraiya. Jiraiya answered that the poison needle had done that, and the man holding it had made the choice. The fox was dangerous, but Naruto was not the fox. That difference mattered enough for Jiraiya to repeat it until the tension left the boy's shoulders. Later, after the antidote worked and Jiraiya could move his arm again, Naruto asked whether the Nine Tails could hear everything outside the seal. Jiraiya admitted he did not know. Naruto spent the rest of the evening speaking in a whisper. He refused to use the bathroom until Jiraiya swore that ancient demons had more important things to do than listen. The promise was based on no evidence at all. For almost a year, the red chakra did not appear again. Jiraiya increased Naruto's control exercises and began teaching him simple breathing patterns. He also inspected the 8 trigram seal every month. Those inspections were recorded in coded reports and sent to Hiruzen through a protected route known to only 3 people. That was why the attack at the northern safe house changed everything. Naruto was 7 when he woke to the sound of rain against the shutters. Jiraiya had told him the night before that a seal inspection would happen at dawn. No visitor was expected. No fire burned in the main room. Even the small toads outside had buried themselves beneath the wet soil. Naruto heard a soft scrape under the floor. He did not call out. Training took over before fear could. He rolled from the bed, pressed 2 fingers to the signal tag beneath the frame, and felt no answering warmth. Someone had already cut the outer network. He tied a strip of red cloth around a wooden practice dummy, pushed it beneath the blanket, and crawled into the narrow passage behind the wall. The first attacker entered through the floor. The second came through the roof. Jiraiya met both in the dark. The room flashed with steel. One intruder drove a seal-covered spike toward Jiraiya's chest. Jiraiya shifted aside, caught the wrist, and broke the arm with a short twist. His heel struck the second attacker in the jaw before the man finished landing. A third figure outside slapped both palms against the ground. Black characters spread across the walls. Naruto felt his chakra become heavy, as if wet sand had been poured into his veins. The pressure centered on his stomach. They had come prepared for the Nine Tails. Naruto continued through the passage. At the rear exit, he pressed his thumb against a summoning mark and called the smallest toad he knew. The creature appeared with a pop, looked at the rain, and immediately complained. Naruto shoved a coated strip of paper into its mouth and pointed toward the drainage tunnel. The toad disappeared into the dark, while Naruto pulled a second strip from his sleeve and headed the opposite way, leaving a false trail. Outside, Jiraiya stopped holding back. His hair filled the doorway in a forest of white needles. The suppression seal cracked under the force of his chakra. One attacker tried to retreat across the roof. Jiraiya's tongue wrapped around the man's ankle and dragged him through the tiles. The fight lasted less than a minute. Keeping one alive took longer. Two bodies burned from the inside when their heartbeats stopped. Another dissolved into black ash after a mark on his neck activated. The last man bit through his own tongue and tried to trigger the same seal, but Jiraiya jammed a needle into the nerve beneath his jaw and stopped the motion. The prisoner never spoke. Before noon, a second seal hidden beneath his ribs stopped his heart, leaving Jiraiya with a corpse and a code that should never have left Konoha. There were no village symbols on his clothes. His weapons had been made in 3 different countries. Every personal mark had been removed. Yet one metal plate inside his sleeve carried an old Konoha root code. That code did not reveal the location of the safe house. It identified the protected channel used to schedule seal inspections. Beneath the prisoner's thumbnail, Jiraiya found a trace of blue sealing resin used at the secondary post where he had collected medical ink 2 days earlier. A dormant tracking powder had been worked into the resin. It carried no active chakra until rain touched it, which explained why his normal checks had missed it. The intruders had not been handed the address. Someone inside the village had given them the date, then arranged for the inspection supplies to lead them the rest of the way. The small toad returned after sunrise. It had reached a secondary post and delivered the warning, but no pursuit came from Konoha. Hiruzen sent a reply through a different route. The message contained only 3 sentences. The Hokage denied authorizing the attack. He ordered Jiraiya to abandon every known location. He asked him to continue reporting the condition of the seal. Jiraiya obeyed the first 2 requests. He stopped sending coordinates. Neither man allowed the attack to disappear into a file. Hiruzen replaced the inspection staff, closed the compromised courier post, and fed 3 different false dates into 3 separate sections of the command system. Jiraiya watched the routes from outside the village. 2 dates remained quiet. The third drew observers to an empty relay house, but the archive clerk connected to that route vanished before he could be questioned, and his records burned in a fire that started inside a locked room. A year later, when Naruto was 8, Jiraiya tested another route with the location of a safe house that had never been used. 2 men watched it for 4 nights and killed themselves when captured. The test narrowed the leak to a small group with access to old guardianship files, but it did not produce a name. Hiruzen could not accuse Danzo without proof. Jiraiya could not enter Konoha and tear through the archives without revealing Naruto's existence. Their investigation continued through false messages, changed couriers, and dead ends. The years that followed were quieter only from a distance. Naruto grew. Jiraiya's network changed shape around him. Safe houses were retired after a single suspicious footprint. Meetings happened through toads, coded books, and messages hidden inside the receipts of traveling merchants. Hiruzen continued protecting Jiraiya from formal accusations. Danzo continued recording every broken procedure. Naruto saw only pieces of the conflict. He noticed that Jiraiya burned letters after reading them. He noticed that certain routes were avoided, even when they were shorter. He noticed that his birthday made his father more restless every year. The Nine Tails noticed too. At first, the voice appeared only in dreams. It came from behind a vast gate in a flooded corridor, low enough to vibrate through Naruto's ribs. The fox offered no name and no friendship. It asked questions. Why did Jiraiya send reports to people Naruto had never met? Why did they move whenever those reports were due? Why was the word 12 carved so deeply into Jiraiya's fear? Kurama had been awake during conversations held beside Naruto's crib, when Naruto himself had been too young to remember them. Naruto usually woke angry and refused to answer. He trusted Jiraiya. That trust held until 7 days before his 12th birthday. Naruto spent the morning in a forest clearing, attempting to cut a hanging leaf with wind chakra. He had already ruined 40 leaves, 2 pieces of rope, and 1 sleeve. Jiraiya sat on a boulder nearby, pretending to read while watching every attempt. Naruto formed a shadow clone. The clone held the leaf. Naruto focused chakra into 2 fingers and pushed. The wind sliced past the target, crossed the clearing, and cut the handle from their cooking pot. The pot dropped into the fire. Soup poured across the flames. A cloud of steam swallowed the campsite. Jiraiya lowered the book and inspected the damage. He admitted that Naruto's cutting power had improved. Naruto pointed out that this sounded like praise. Jiraiya added that they would be eating cold rice until a new pot could be purchased. The improvements suddenly felt less impressive. Naruto could create 6 stable shadow clones, move across water, and fight better than most students who had completed a village academy. He knew how to hide his scent, recognize common poisons, and build simple warning seals from ink and blood. He could also confuse the 5 major nations when asked to name their current military leaders. Jiraiya had tried to correct this gap in his education. Naruto had fallen asleep on the history scroll and left ink across his face in the shape of the Land of Wind. The lesson did not continue. That afternoon, a messenger toad appeared beneath Jiraiya's coat and whispered that an authenticated Konoha courier had reached the western dead drop. The humor left Jiraiya's face. Naruto noticed the change. He also noticed Jiraiya's hand move toward the inner pocket, where he kept the oldest sealed document in their possession. Jiraiya told him to pack the camp. They reached the dead drop near sunset. It was a stone marker beside an unused trade road, chosen because the ground around it showed every footprint. A young Konoha courier waited beneath the trees with both hands visible. Jiraiya spent 10 minutes checking him. The man's chakra matched the identity seal. His route tokens were genuine. He knew the current challenge phrase and the false answer that should never be accepted. The scroll he carried bore Hiruzen's personal mark. The courier knew nothing about its contents. He had received it from an Anbu captain inside the Hokage Tower and followed a route that changed at 3 separate posts. Jiraiya accepted the scroll but did not bring the courier to the safe house. He waited until the man was several miles away, then led Naruto through 2 false trails and a river before returning to their cottage. Only then did he break the seal. The first page was exactly what he expected and feared. Hiruzen ordered him to return to Konoha with Naruto. Intelligence from several countries suggested that an organization had begun collecting information about Jinchuriki. The 8 trigram seal needed to be inspected by a full team, and the old guardianship agreement had to be reviewed before Naruto's birthday. The second page changed the meaning of everything. It ordered Naruto separated from Jiraiya upon arrival and transferred to a special training division. Contact would be restricted until village officials confirmed his loyalty and control. The signatures were correct. The paper came from the Hokage Tower. The chakra and the sealing ink belonged to Hiruzen. Jiraiya read the wording 3 times. Naruto waited across the table and watched one of the strongest men in the world tighten his fingers until the edge of the scroll tore. Jiraiya did not believe it. Hiruzen might demand their return. He might order inspections, guards, and formal service. He would not describe a 12-year-old boy as a loyalty risk in a sealed directive, and he would never place a separation order on a removable second page. Jiraiya summoned a messenger toad. The creature appeared, inhaled, and vanished in a puff of smoke. A heartbeat later, it reappeared upside down beneath the ceiling and crashed onto the table. Reverse summoning had failed. Jiraiya was already moving. He opened a floor panel, pulled out 3 storage scrolls, and threw one to Naruto. The boy caught it without asking. One of the scrolls was bound with red cord and protected by an incineration seal. It held Jiraiya's field copies of the guardianship orders, the proof he would need if a Konoha patrol ever accused him of abducting Naruto. Their escape plan had been practiced so many times that Naruto's body knew the order. Documents first, medicine second, food only if there was space. Naruto reached for the western exit. Jiraiya stopped him and pointed toward the roof. The outer signal lines had not warned them, but the night insects had gone silent. Someone was already around the house. The cottage was protected against scent tracking and casual chakra detection. Anyone waiting this close had not followed them from the dead drop. They had known which fallback location Jiraiya would use after receiving an authenticated order. Jiraiya extinguished the lamp with 2 fingers. The cottage fell dark. Naruto moved toward the narrow panel behind the pantry. Jiraiya caught his shoulder and changed the plan with 3 hand signs. The western tunnel was compromised. Naruto would take the northern crawlspace, create 2 clones, and send them toward the river. The real Naruto would circle back through the cedar grove and reach the buried emergency seal. Jiraiya would hold the house. Naruto hated that part of the plan. He also knew arguing would cost time. He slipped into the wall. The first attack came from beneath the foundation. A black seal ignited under the cottage. The floor shuddered. Lines of ink raced between the boards and climbed the walls, forming a barrier shaped like a cage. Naruto felt the 8-trigram seal tighten painfully around his stomach. Outside, 6 figures landed on the roof at the same time. Their masks were pale and expressionless. Their clothing matched root equipment closely enough to fool most shinobi, and they carried no forehead protectors, personal names, or visible ranks. One voice carried through the wall. The squad claimed authority from Konoha and ordered Jiraiya to surrender the Jinchuriki. Jiraiya answered by driving his heel through the floor. The impact shattered the central formula beneath the house. The pressure around Naruto's stomach weakened for half a second. That was enough. He formed the shadow clone sign inside the crawlspace. 2 copies appeared, in a squeeze of elbows and knees. One clone complained that the passage had not been built for 3 people. Naruto pushed both toward the northern exit and crawled back the other way. Above him, the roof collapsed. The attackers had expected Jiraiya to defend the cottage. Instead, he burst through the side wall and carried the fight outside before their barrier fully closed. His white hair spread around him in a hardened shield as wire, needles, and ceiling tags struck from 3 directions. The wire and needles bounced away, while 4 pieces of paper attached themselves to his hair and began draining chakra from every strand they touched. Jiraiya cut off the affected locks with a kunai before the formula reached his scalp. 2 masked shinobi rushed him, while a 3rd remained near the barrier anchor. Their movements were disciplined, but not identical. The first used the silent footwork taught to root operatives. The second carried his weight too far forward and favored the curved blade style common in the land of grass. Jiraiya noticed both details before their weapons reached him. He blocked the root shinobi's short sword with the metal guard on his forearm. His other hand struck the grass fighter under the chin. The man left the ground, hit a tree trunk, and did not rise. The root operative twisted away and threw 3 black rods toward Jiraiya's shadow. Jiraiya jumped. The rods pinned the shadow to the earth a moment too late. A pulse of chakra came from the barrier anchor. The ground beneath Jiraiya softened into mud. He sank to the knee. 2 attackers emerged from hiding, hands already marked with suppression formulas. They were not trying to kill him. They wanted his limbs sealed long enough to reach Naruto. That restriction made them dangerous. It also made them predictable. Jiraiya let the first hand touch his shoulder. Ink spread across his coat. The attacker leaned in to complete the seal and found a block of wood where Jiraiya had been. The real Jiraiya rose from the mud behind him, caught the man's mask, and drove his face into the ground hard enough to crack both. The second attacker tried to retreat. Jiraiya's hair wrapped around his waist and pulled him backward. A single palm strike to the spine ended the fight. Then, green smoke poured from the cottage windows. The squad had released a compound designed to disrupt amphibian lungs. The smallest toads hidden around the property began falling from the branches. Jiraiya's expression changed. The attackers had not merely studied Jinchuriki. They had studied him. Inside the wall, Naruto reached the rear vent and pushed it open with 2 fingers. The cedar grove lay 20 steps away. A masked shinobi stood between him and the trees. The man was facing north, tracking the 2 clones racing toward the river. Naruto waited until the shinobi moved. Then he slipped out, pressed his hands to the ground, and released a weak gust of wind beneath the fallen leaves. The leaves lifted in a wide spiral, carrying his scent toward the eastern path. The shinobi stopped, his head turned toward the false trail. Naruto reached the first cedar. A wire snapped around his ankle. He hit the ground and slid backward. The masked shinobi had placed a second line beneath the leaves before the attack. Naruto cut the wire with a chakra-edged kunai, but the delay cost him. The man landed between Naruto and the emergency seal. He was taller than the others and wore 4 metal plates across his chest. Small characters glowed along each plate. Naruto felt the red chakra inside him recoil. The man extended one hand. A black ribbon covered in sealing script shot from his sleeve. Naruto replaced himself with a broken log. The ribbon wrapped around the wood and crushed it. He appeared on a branch overhead and created 3 clones. All 4 scattered in different directions. The masked shinobi did not chase. He slammed both palms together. The plates on his chest released a low vibration. Naruto's clones flickered and vanished, one after the other, as the technique disrupted chakra patterns at close range. The real Naruto felt his legs weaken. He understood the trap. The enemy did not need to identify the original. He could collapse every clone and then bind whoever remained. Naruto threw a handful of kunai. The man deflected them with the black ribbon and advanced. Naruto backed toward a fallen tree, deliberately dragging one foot. The enemy saw the weakness and accelerated. That was what Naruto wanted. He jumped onto the trunk. The shinobi followed. Naruto pressed his heel against a nearly invisible paper mark he had placed there during training 2 weeks earlier. The log split open. A net of weighted wire snapped upward from both sides. The masked man cut the first 3 lines, but the 4th caught his elbow. Naruto's surviving clone dropped from the branches and wrapped both arms around his head. The enemy tore free before the trap fully closed. He drove an elbow through the clone and reached for Naruto. Naruto released wind chakra from his palm at point-blank range. The gust did not cut deeply. His control was too rough. It did, however, fill the space beneath the mask with bark, dust, and splinters. The man flinched. Naruto kicked the lowest metal plate on his chest. The plate cracked against the wire trap. Its characters went dark, and part of the chest harness tore loose with it. A flat waterproof packet slid into the leaves. The packet carried an old Konoha custody code. Naruto seized it as he rolled away, pushed it into an empty storage capsule from his belt, and formed another clone. He attacked from both sides. The enemy recovered quickly. He blocked the clone's fist, seized its arm, and threw it into Naruto. Both boys struck the ground. The clone vanished. Naruto rolled away from the black ribbon by less than a handspan. His bruises and failing clones measured the cost of the delay, while every second kept the attacker away from the buried seal. Naruto pulled a small summoning tag from his sleeve and bit his thumb. He pressed blood to the ink. A toad no larger than a melon appeared in the grass. The toad looked at the masked shinobi, looked at Naruto, and demanded to know why every summoning happened during something unpleasant. Naruto stuffed the evidence capsule into its mouth, whispered the emergency rendezvous at Fox Shrine 7, and kicked loose soil over it. The masked man abandoned Naruto and lunged for the toad as soon as he recognized the stolen packet. Naruto caught his ankle with both hands. The shinobi dragged him several feet through the dirt. The black ribbon wrapped around Naruto's shoulder and tightened. Pain shot down his arm. The toad reached the edge of the barrier and struck an invisible wall. It could not escape. The masked man raised his blade. Jiraiya landed between them. He caught the blade in his bare hand. The metal cut his palm, but stopped. The attacker tried to activate the suppression plates. Jiraiya drove his forehead into the mask. Bone cracked. Before the man could fall, Jiraiya seized the front of his armor and threw him through 2 cedar trunks. The fight ended for that attacker. Jiraiya tore the ribbon from Naruto's shoulder and checked the wound. It was shallow. His own face carried 3 fresh cuts, and the sleeve over his left arm had burned away. Naruto pointed toward the barrier anchor instead of asking whether he was all right. 3 shinobi remained around it. 1 maintained the seal. 2 guarded him. A 4th figure stood farther back among the trees, hands hidden inside wide sleeves. Jiraiya recognized the formation. The visible fighters were buying time while the distant shinobi prepared something larger. The air changed. The smell of wet earth gave way to something sharp and chemical. Snakes began crawling from beneath the roots. Dozens of them crossed the ground toward Naruto. Each carried a small suppression tag wrapped around its neck. Jiraiya's gaze fixed on the distant figure. The masked squad had used root methods. The snakes belonged to someone else. He ordered Naruto to take the toad and move behind him. Then Jiraiya bit his thumb and slammed his palm against the ground. The barrier resisted the summoning. Chakra gathered, twisted, and pushed back against him. Jiraiya forced more power into the formula. The earth exploded. A large orange toad erupted from beneath the trees, tearing through one side of the barrier as it arrived. It was not Gamabunta, but it was big enough to crush the first wave of snakes under 1 foot. The toad inhaled to release oil. Green gas struck its face. It coughed, staggered, and nearly collapsed on Naruto. The enemy had planned for that too. Jiraiya changed tactics immediately. He dismissed the toad before the gas could cause lasting damage, and used the broken summoning point as an opening in the barrier. Naruto saw the chance. He sent 2 clones toward the gap, both carrying identical storage scrolls. The guards split. One chased the left clone, the other threw suppression rods at the right. Neither noticed the tiny toad crawling beneath the churned soil with the real evidence capsule still in its mouth. Naruto's earlier summoning had failed to escape, but it had not failed to understand. The toad reached the damaged edge of the barrier and disappeared into the forest. The distant figure moved for the first time. His neck stretched unnaturally beneath the mask. A snake-shaped tongue shot across the clearing toward the toad. Jiraiya intercepted it with a kunai. The blade cut through flesh. The severed tongue struck the ground and continued writhing. For the first time, the enemy formation broke. Jiraiya used the opening. He formed signs and released a stream of oil across the barrier anchor. A spark from his next breath turned it into a wall of fire. The 2 guards leaped away. The seal keeper remained seated, desperate to maintain the formula. Naruto understood before Jiraiya gave the signal. He formed 3 clones. Each grabbed a corner of the large storage scroll they had carried from the house. Together, they opened it toward the flames. The attackers braced for weapons or explosive tags. A stack of handwritten pages burst from the scroll instead. They were early drafts of Jiraiya's newest novel. The pages had been protected with a security seal meant to punish anyone who opened them without permission. The heat triggered the seal. Black ink erupted across the clearing in a thick wave and stuck to masks, hands, and weapons. One guard slipped on a page containing a particularly embarrassing romantic scene. Naruto would have laughed under other circumstances. Jiraiya used the distraction to cross the clearing. His first strike knocked the guard unconscious. His second broke the seal keeper's concentration. The barrier shattered with a sound like glass cracking underwater. The distant snake user tried to flee. Jiraiya's hair caught him around the torso. The man's body twisted farther than a human spine should allow. He shed the outer layer of skin, leaving the armor and mask behind, and emerged pale and slick several steps away. He bit down on something hidden between his teeth. Jiraiya reached him too late to stop the poison. The man collapsed, convulsed once, and went still. Under the torn skin, narrow scales ran along his ribs. Several muscles had been replaced with pale, grafted tissue. A circular mark at the base of his neck resembled the early stages of a cursed seal. Jiraiya had seen similar work before. Orochimaru had once filled hidden laboratories with bodies altered in exactly this way. The remaining masked shinobi retreated as soon as the barrier fell. Jiraiya could have chased them, but Naruto was bleeding, the safe house was burning, and the gas had begun spreading through the trees. He chose his son. Naruto gave him the Toad's rendezvous point as they left through the southern ravine, while flames consumed the cottage. Behind them, 2 wounded attackers survived long enough to gather the masks, weapons, and bodies that could be moved. By dawn, the place would tell whatever story the survivors wanted it to tell. Jiraiya and Naruto traveled until the moon crossed half the sky. They reached an abandoned hillside shrine whose roof had collapsed years earlier. Stone foxes stood among the weeds, their faces worn smooth by rain. Jiraiya checked the area twice before allowing Naruto to sit. Naruto's shoulder had begun to swell where the black ribbon cut him. Jiraiya cleaned the wound, applied medicine, and wrapped it in a bandage. His movements were efficient. They were also too careful. Naruto knew that kind of silence. Jiraiya used it when there was something he did not want to explain. The small toad reached Fox Shrine 7 shortly before dawn. It spat the evidence capsule into Naruto's lap, demanded 3 bowls of fried insects as payment, and disappeared before Jiraiya could negotiate. Inside the capsule were the papers Naruto had torn from the attacker's damaged chest harness. Most were coded route fragments, extraction times, and diagrams of the suppression barrier. One document had been folded beneath the others. It was attached to an extraction authorization, the kind a retrieval commander could present if another Konoha patrol challenged his custody claim. The copied agreement gave the operation a legal appearance. It was old. The paper had yellowed at the edges, but the seal at the bottom remained clear. Naruto saw his name before Jiraiya could take it. Naruto Uzumaki, protected Jinchuriki of Konohagakure. Custody assigned to Jiraiya, under direct authority of the 3rd Hokage. Mandatory return when the subject reaches 12 years of age. Naruto read the final line again. His birthday was 7 days away. The older man did not reach for the document. He sat across the broken shrine, with one hand resting on his injured knee. The first gray light of morning touched the cuts on his face. Naruto asked whether the paper was real. Jiraiya answered that the copy might have been taken from the village archive, but the agreement itself was real. The words settled more heavily than the suppression barrier had. Naruto remembered the hidden reports, the moves made shortly before his birthday, and every time Jiraiya had claimed the next journey was simply safer. He remembered the second page of Hiruzen's order and understood why Jiraiya had looked afraid. The Nine Tails stirred behind the seal. Its voice rolled through Naruto's thoughts with quiet satisfaction. A cage, it observed, did not need iron bars. It could have warm meals, open roads, and a man who loved him. Naruto pressed a fist against his stomach until the voice faded, then folded the edge of the contract so tightly that the paper cut into his thumb. He kept his eyes on the blood instead of Jiraiya. Jiraiya explained the night of Naruto's birth. He described Danzo's demand, Hiruzen's compromise, and the reason he signed. If he had refused, Root would have taken Naruto before morning. At the time, 12 years had seemed long enough to change the arrangement. Then, Naruto became a toddler, who followed him from room to room, a child who slept with a wooden kunai beneath his pillow. He became a boy who brought injured birds into safe houses and used classified sealing paper to make bandages. Jiraiya kept planning to tell him. At 6, Naruto had barely learned about the Nine Tails. The first leak came when he was 7, and the failed test route a year later proved the danger had not passed. By 9, Jiraiya was telling himself the truth would only make Naruto afraid. At 10, the lie had grown too large to explain cleanly, and during the following year, every possible beginning sounded like an excuse. Naruto listened, with his eyes fixed on the contract. The signature at the bottom was Jiraiya's. He finally asked the question that had been building since he saw it. Was I your son, or was I Minato's last assignment? Jiraiya's hand remained on his injured knee until his fingers curled against the bandage. Then, he opened the red cord storage scroll and released its incineration seal with his thumbprint. Inside were a few personal field drafts, tied with faded cord, pages he had kept because they proved both his legal authority and the way that assignment had changed. The earliest sheets were stiff with age. Naruto read the first. The protected object remained stable. The seal showed no visible degradation. The object consumed an appropriate amount of food. The word object had been crossed out each time. Naruto's name appeared above it in darker ink. The next report referred to the child. The one after that referred to Naruto. Several years later, the reports stopped describing his condition in clinical terms. They mentioned that Naruto had learned to climb trees, that his left knee healed poorly because he refused to stay still. They mentioned that his control improved whenever training was presented as a competition. One page contained a complaint that the Hokage had not reimbursed the cost of replacing a wall destroyed by a 6-year-old. The final reports included only seal measurements. Everything personal had been removed because Jiraiya no longer believed the village had a right to possess it. Naruto set the pages down. They answered his question, though the pain behind it stayed exactly where it was. Jiraiya admitted that loving Naruto did not excuse hiding the contract. He had made decisions alone because that was how he survived as a spy. Every dangerous problem became something to carry away from the people he wanted to protect. That habit had saved lives. It had also placed a lie at the center of their home. Jiraiya offered a solution. They could disappear. His network reached into neutral countries where Konoha influence was weak. They could destroy the remaining routes, change their names, and live far from the great villages. Hiruzen would condemn the choice. Danzo would call it treason. Neither would find them easily. Naruto looked beyond the broken wall of the shrine. Mist covered the valley. Somewhere below, farmers were beginning their day. They knew nothing about Jinchuriki, secret agreements, or men who decided the ownership of children beneath hospitals. For several hours, Naruto said very little. Jiraiya did not press him. The older man repaired equipment while Naruto walked around the shrine, reading the stolen papers again and again. The original order from Hiruzen had been written in a firm hand and sealed as a single document. The separation instruction was attached afterward. Its language was colder. Its corners had been cut by a different blade. The enemy wanted Jiraiya to run. If he disappeared, Konoha would see only a guardian who refused a legal order. The surviving attackers would report that Jiraiya had killed an official retrieval squad. Danzo would gain every argument he had been building for 12 years. Someone inside the village would remain hidden. Someone connected to Orochimaru would still possess Konoha archive documents. Naruto thought about the altered bodies in the forest. Those men had not been born able to shed their skin. Someone had experimented on them, carved formulas into their flesh, and sent them to capture another child marked by a seal. Running would protect Naruto. It would not stop any of that. By afternoon, Jiraiya had packed the shrine and prepared a route southwest toward a neutral border. Naruto took the map from his hands and turned it around. The road to Konoha lay northeast. Jiraiya studied him for a long moment. Naruto explained his decision in a steady voice. A contract would not decide why he returned, and he had no intention of entering Route, surrendering his seal, or promising loyalty to people he had never met. He was going because someone had used Konoha's authority to attack their home and turn Jiraiya into a criminal. He wanted the name of that person. He wanted Hiruzen to explain the real order to his face. Most of all, he wanted the village to learn that any future agreement concerning Naruto Uzumaki would include Naruto Uzumaki. Jiraiya warned him that Konoha might try to hold him once he crossed the barrier. Naruto answered that staying outside had not prevented them from trying. That left Jiraiya with no argument he respected. Naruto set one condition before giving the map back. Jiraiya would keep no more important secrets from him. Naruto kept the old contract inside his own pack instead of returning it, and slept on the far side of the shrine that night. When Jiraiya checked the perimeter, Naruto waited until he was gone and checked it again. In the morning, they packed together, But Naruto tied his own storage scrolls and kept them within reach. Far away, inside the Hokage Tower, Hiruzen received the first report of the attack. The message came through an old emergency channel once assigned to Root, a channel that should have died when the organization was formally dissolved after the Uchiha disaster. Hiruzen knew Danzo had never surrendered every operative, but he had not expected the buried channel to be used openly. The report claimed that Jiraiya had rejected a lawful retrieval order, destroyed a Konoha barrier team, killed several operatives, and escaped with the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Attached to it was a field copy of the authority scroll the commander claimed to have carried. Danzo arrived before Hiruzen finished reading. He argued that the outcome proved what he had warned 12 years earlier. Jiraiya had grown attached, abandoned procedure, and placed personal loyalty above the village. The longer Konoha waited, the farther he would take its strongest weapon. Hiruzen ignored the word weapon and opened the archived copy of his order. The first page matched the field copy. The second page existed only in the commander's attachment. The sealing ledger showed that Hiruzen's chakra mark had been applied once before the scroll left the tower. On the field copy, the added page overlapped the outer edge of that genuine mark, instead of carrying a complete authentication of its own. Someone had attached it after dispatch and relied on the surviving fragment to pass a hurried inspection. The method required access to the command archive, the courier schedule, and old documents from Naruto's guardianship case. Danzo denied authorizing the separation order. Hiruzen believed that Danzo was telling part of the truth. Danzo wanted Naruto under his control and had never hidden that desire. He preferred a transfer, backed by the elders and an old emergency clause. He rejected an operation that risked killing the Jinchuriki, exposing forbidden root methods, and turning Jiraiya into an open enemy. It meant another hand was moving through the same machinery. Hiruzen could no longer trust the normal investigation routes. Anbu records had been accessed. Former root operatives claimed casualties. The courier chain had been compromised. He chose one shinobi whose loyalty to Konoha had never erased his ability to question an order. Kakashi arrived after midnight. Hiruzen first ordered him to locate Jiraiya, secure the Jinchuriki, and return both to Konoha alive. Then, he placed the archived order beside the field copy, and gave him a second mission that would not enter any record. Find out who had added the missing page. Kakashi read Naruto's name in the old guardianship file. For several seconds, his visible eye remained on the page. Kakashi had known only that Minato's newborn son survived and had been moved beyond the village under an S-rank concealment order. Hiruzen had forbidden him from searching because a famous student of Minato asking questions would create a trail for the same enemy who had found Kushina. He had never been told the Guardian was Jiraiya, and every request for a status report had been refused. Now the boy was almost 12, and Kakashi's first meeting with him might happen at the point of a blade. Hiruzen allowed Kakashi to choose 3 Anbu he had commanded for years, none of whom had access to the archive or courier office. They received only the official retrieval order. Kakashi carried the secret investigation alone. He left before dawn with those 3 operatives and his ninken. Unknown to Hiruzen, a group loyal to Danzo had already departed through another gate, with the broad search sector copied from a council dispatch. Jiraiya and Naruto traveled toward Konoha by routes no village patrol would normally use. They crossed rivers on fallen trees, slept beneath rock shelves, and avoided towns large enough to maintain shinobi registries. Jiraiya answered every question Naruto asked. Minato had been brilliant, patient, and so polite that enemies sometimes realized too late they were being threatened. Kushina had possessed a temper strong enough to frighten grown jonin, and a laugh loud enough to fill a training ground. Kakashi had been Minato's student. He was loyal, difficult, and deeply talented at appearing late, even when he had started nearby. Hiruzen had protected Naruto from Root, but he had also signed the document that treated his future service as a certainty. Jiraiya did not soften any of it. On the 3rd day, they needed new cover identities before passing a road checkpoint. Naruto proposed that he become a young noble traveling to Konoha to purchase a private army. Jiraiya rejected the idea because it would attract attention from every bandit, tax collector, and ambitious minor official in the country. Naruto then suggested a famous martial artist and his elderly servant. Jiraiya objected to the word elderly. They eventually chose a sickly nephew and an uncle taking him to a healer. A transformation technique darkened Naruto's hair and softened the marks on his cheeks. Jiraiya gave himself brown hair, a narrow beard, and enough lines around the eyes to look offended by every stairway. Naruto ruined the disguise by eating 3 bowls of noodles at the checkpoint and challenging a guard to an arm wrestling match. The guard decided no sick child could be that annoying and waved them through, simply to remove them from the line. Jiraiya considered the mission a success. Naruto considered it proof that his acting deserved professional recognition. The familiar argument eased some of the distance between them. Later that evening, they reached a ridge overlooking the deeper forests of Fire Country. A weathered road marker pointed northeast. Konoha. Naruto stood beside it longer than necessary. He had imagined a village in pieces drawn from Jiraiya's stories. Wide training fields, crowded markets, the Hokage monument, clan compounds, and the tower where his father once worked. Streets that had never carried Naruto's footsteps, yet belonged to a government that had already written orders for his life. The Nine Tails spoke from behind its gate. It asked whether Naruto expected humans to welcome the return of their missing weapon. Naruto tightened the strap of his pack and continued walking. He expected nothing. That was better than accepting a lie prepared in advance. They entered the forest before sunset. Jiraiya chose a route that curved around the main patrol roads, but 2 flooded ravines forced every hidden approach through the same narrow band of high ground. He disliked the bottleneck and stopped twice to inspect it. The trees grew close together, their upper branches forming a roof of dark green. Moss softened their steps. Birds called overhead. After an hour, Naruto noticed that the calls had stopped. He raised one hand. Jiraiya froze. A brown shape moved between the roots ahead. Then another appeared to the left. A third dropped from a branch behind them. Ninja hounds surrounded the path with their noses low and muscles tense. Naruto recognized the formation. They were not hunting by sight. Every route away from the clearing had already been marked by scent. A tall shinobi stepped from behind an oak. Silver hair leaned to one side above a dark mask. A forehead protector covered his left eye. 3 Anbu spread behind him, each keeping a careful distance from Jiraiya. Kakashi looked first at the older Sannin, then his visible eye moved to Naruto's face. The resemblance to Minato was not exact. Naruto's expression carried too much of Kushina, and the whisker marks made him unmistakably his own person. Even so, Kakashi's hand tightened around the mission scroll. Naruto studied the man who had once learned under his father, and whose name had entered their conversations only 3 days earlier. Neither of them found an easy beginning. Kakashi fell back on the order. He stated that Jiraiya was under investigation for attacking Konoha personnel. Naruto was to be placed under Hokage protection until the authenticity of the retrieval mission could be determined. Jiraiya asked whether that protection included separation and forced training. Kakashi answered that no such instruction appeared in the order he had received. The answer weakened one suspicion, though trust remained out of reach. The Anbu shifted as Jiraiya reached slowly into his coat. Kakashi's hand moved toward a kunai. Naruto stepped half a pace forward, uncertain whether he was standing between 2 allies or 2 men preparing to become enemies. Then, the first hidden seal ignited beneath the moss. A line of black fire raced around the clearing. The ninja hounds barked and jumped inward as a transparent wall rose between the trees. More formulas appeared overhead, connecting branch to branch in a sealed dome. The ink had been buried in an inert state and activated from outside, which was why neither the hounds nor the ANBU had sensed chakra from it. Kakashi turned sharply toward his team. None of them had placed it. Jiraiya recognized the compressed characters along the lower edge. They came from root training manuals that should have been sealed years ago. Masked figures appeared in the trees outside the barrier. They had reached the bottleneck first. laid the dormant formula across the most likely crossing point, and waited for Kakashi's hounds to drive their targets inside. There were too many for the retrieval team. Several carried the same suppression plates used at the safe house. Others held crossbows loaded with sealing bolts, aimed directly at Naruto. One figure stepped onto a branch, above the rest, and unfolded a written authorization bearing Danzo's mark and the seals of both village elders. It invoked the emergency custody clause from the original guardianship agreement. The commander claimed that Kakashi's mission was suspended pending a council review, and that the Jinchuriki would be transferred to secure custody immediately. Jiraiya could surrender or be treated as a traitor. Kakashi was ordered to stand aside. Kakashi replied that only the Hokage could cancel a mission issued under the Hokage's seal. He did not lower his weapon. Jiraiya moved closer to Naruto. The former root shinobi raised their crossbows. Naruto looked from the white-haired father, who had hidden the truth, to the silver-haired stranger, who carried an order from the village. Beyond them waited men who did not bother using his name. For 12 years, adults had argued over where he belonged. This time, Naruto was standing inside the argument. The first sealing bolt left the crossbow. Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Naruto moved at the same instant.